Have you ever noticed just something entirely bizarre about how you operate? Like you can answer 20 emails, scrub a coffee mug that's been sitting on your desk for 3 days,
Hmm.
or, I don't know, confidently open 5 random browser tabs to research the invention of the toaster.
Right, the classic productive procrastination.
Exactly. But the exact moment you face a genuinely big, important task like writing that research paper, editing a video, mapping out a massive project for work, your brain acts like it just touched a hot stove.
Oh, you physically recoil.
You really do. I actually found myself alphabetizing my spice rack last week instead of writing a proposal.
I mean, it is a universally maddening human experience. You sit down, the document is open, the cursor is blinking, and suddenly the urge to be literally anywhere else is so powerful it feels like, a biological imperative.
And today, we're going to figure out exactly why that happens. We have a fantastic stack of sources for this deep dive.
Yeah, a really robust collection.
Right, we've got peer-reviewed psychology meta-analyses, randomized controlled trials, a fascinating neuroscience paper from Nature Communications, and expert interviews from the APA and the Washington Post.
Which is great because this isn't just about opinions, it's hard data.
Exactly. And our mission today is very specific. We are not going to give you like another generic time management lecture. You do not need to buy a new planner. Our goal is to prove to you that procrastination is not a laziness problem.
Not at all.
It is an emotion regulation problem.
Which honestly requires a profound shift in how we view our own behavior. Because when we stop throwing the word lazy around and start decoding the specific glitches in how the human brain processes big tasks, we can stop fighting our biology.
Right? We can actually look under the hood and start working with those mechanisms.
Exactly. But before we can fix anything, we need to correctly identify what a big task actually looks like to your brain.
Because right now, society just slaps the label of lazy on anyone who delays.
They do, yeah. But if we look at experts interviewed in the Washington Post, they point out that about 20% of adults are chronic procrastinators.
Wait, 20%? That's 1 in 5 people.
1 in 5. That proves we are looking at a widespread human condition, not some isolated moral failing or, a lack of character.
Okay, so the data takes that a step further.
Yeah. To understand what is happening, we really have to look at how behavioral science defines the problem. There's a massive meta-analysis by researcher Piers Steele from a few years back.
Oh, right. The one that aggregated hundreds of studies.
Exactly, based on nearly 700 correlations to find the biggest predictors of this behavior. In the literature, procrastination is rigorously defined as choosing to voluntarily delay an action despite fully expecting that the delay will cause you harm or stress.
Voluntarily delay despite the harm. Wow.
Yeah, and the single biggest predictor of this behavior showing a massive relationship across the board is a concept called task aversiveness.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because when I hear the word aversive, I immediately think of physical pain or fear.
Right.
Like dodging a stray dog on the street.
Right, something visceral.
Yeah. But a big task at work isn't a physical threat. It's not a heavy boulder you can't lift.
Let's pause there because, well, it's not quite that simple. Your brain doesn't always distinguish between physical threat and psychological friction.
Really?
Yeah. Researchers looking at undergraduates decided to break down exactly what this aversiveness feels like in the real world. They found it's not a general sense of fear. Task aversiveness is a very potent, specific cocktail of negative emotions.
Okay, like what?
Primarily boredom, frustration, and resentment.
Oh, resentment. So it's more like a tangled ball of cables that makes you deeply agitated just looking at it.
That is a much better analogy. Boredom happens because the initial steps might be understimulating, right? Frustration kicks in because the path forward is confusing or blocked. And resentment bubbles up because you feel obligated to do it. So when you freeze in front of a big task, your brain isn't evaluating your work ethic. It is experiencing a complex, deeply uncomfortable emotional state, and it wants out.
Which brings us to a massive contradiction, I think.
So,
Well, if a task generates all this frustration, why on earth does the brain choose a coping mechanism that we know is going to make the frustration so much worse tomorrow? Because pushing it off always results in a bigger panic later.
well, absolutely. But it comes down to a psychological mechanism called mood repair.
Mood repair.
Yeah. Research into this area argues that procrastination isn't a time management failure, it's an immediate emotional band-aid. People prioritize short-term mood regulation over their long-term
So
goals.
they just want to feel better right now.
Exactly. Essentially, when that cocktail of frustration and boredom hits, procrastination serves as emotional pain relief.
So it's like eating a box of donuts because you're stressed about your health. It fixes the feeling for about 10 minutes, but, completely damages the long-term goal.
What's fascinating here is how the brain compartmentalizes this. You calm today's self by dumping the cost entirely onto tomorrow's self.
Wow. Tomorrow's self takes the hit.
It's a localized protective mechanism. Your present self is feeling dread, and your brain's primary directive is to regulate that negative emotion immediately. So it shifts the burden.
Task avoidance protects the present version of you while throwing the future version of you completely under the bus.
Literally under the bus, yeah.
So think about the last time you suddenly felt the overwhelming urge to clean your kitchen or reorganize your bookshelves instead of working or, alphabetize a spice rack.
Right, the spice rack.
Your brain wasn't craving productivity, right? It was craving a feeling of safety and control. You wanted to feel competent at something because the big, vague task was making you feel incompetent.
That's a huge part of it.
And the irony here is that sometimes you procrastinate exactly because you care so much about the task. I mean, if it was a meaningless assignment, it wouldn't generate so much anxiety and you just breeze right through it.
Exactly. It's the caring that gives the emotions their weight. And that dynamic is strongly supported by the clinical data.
What does the data say?
A cross-sectional study recently looked at about 250 students and found a very significant positive association between procrastination and emotion regulation difficulties. They measured this using a tool called the DERS scale.
What does that actually measure, though? Because emotion regulation difficulty sounds like, well, a fancy way of saying someone is just moody.
No, it's much more specific. The DERS scale tracks internal processes. It measures your lack of emotional awareness, so literally not knowing what you are feeling, and your inability to control impulses when experiencing negative emotions.
Oh, so just reacting without thinking.
Right. And the study found that even after they controlled for clinical anxiety and depression, the link to procrastination remained.
Wait, really? So it's independent of anxiety and depression?
Totally independent. The core predictor wasn't how busy the students were, it was their inability to process and move through a negative feeling without needing to escape it.
Okay, so we know the brain is escaping an emotion,
Mm-hmm.
but I still don't get how it justifies this escape to itself. I mean, we are rational beings. We know the deadline is coming.
Mostly rational, yeah.
Right, mostly. But why doesn't the looming threat of the deadline override the need for this immediate comfort? Do we just temporarily forget the deadline exists?
It's not memory. Your memory of the deadline is perfectly fine. The glitch happens in your brain's valuation system.
Valuation system, like how we weigh things.
Exactly. A recent real-world study tracked a group of participants over 109 days. Now, unlike older studies that just looked at whether someone finished on the final day, these researchers looked at the full time course of the work program.
Okay, so tracking them every day.
Right. And they found a strong positive correlation between procrastination and a phenomenon known as temporal discounting.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because temporal discounting is basically your brain doing a highly distorted math equation, isn't it?
Let's hear your math equation.
Well, big tasks usually pay out late. The discomfort of the work charges your brain right now. The frustration is immediate and real.
Very real.
But the reward, the good grade, the paycheck, the relief, the praise from your boss is deposited much later. So the pain right now feels incredibly loud in your mind, but a reward 3 weeks from now feels very, very quiet.
That's a great way to put it.
So the brain runs the numbers and says, oh, huge cost today for a tiny reward later. Bad deal. Let's go watch a movie.
The auditory analogy perfectly captures the mechanism. Your brain severely underweights the value of future rewards. It discounts them simply because they exist in the future.
It's just too far away to care.
Exactly, and this explains precisely why deadlines suddenly start working at the 11th hour.
Oh, because it gets loud.
Yes. The closer the reward, or more accurately, the closer the catastrophic consequence of failing gets to you, the louder it becomes in the brain's internal computation.
So it drowns out the discomfort of the task.
Precisely. Eventually, the sheer volume of the impending disaster finally outweighs the immediate discomfort, and you get to work.
But until that alarm bell is deafening, the brain is perfectly happy to ignore it.
Yeah.
And from what we found in the sources, the brain isn't just discounting the future reward, it is actively hallucinating about the future work itself.
Yes, and this is where the neuroscience offers a major breakthrough. A fascinating paper published in Nature Communications looked at healthy adults using fMRI scans and behavioral modeling.
Just to clarify, an fMRI tracks blood flow in the brain, right?
That's right, essentially showing which areas are working hardest when participants make choices. And their core finding was that delaying work actually decreases the felt effort cost of a task in the brain's computational networks.
Wait, I need to make sure I understand this. What does looking at blood flow in the brain tell us about why I'm, like, completely ignoring a spreadsheet?
Well, the researchers were looking at the brain regions responsible for weighing effort against reward. They found that to your brain's valuation system, tomorrow's effort literally registers as less demanding than today's effort.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's wild. When people in the lab chose to push a task to tomorrow, it was largely because their brains neurologically perceived the delayed work as requiring significantly less physical and mental energy.
Oh, this explains so much about human nature.
Such a
We all have this fantasy version of ourselves living in the future. You tell yourself, tomorrow I'll be refreshed. Tomorrow I'll have a coffee and sit down and be incredibly focused. Tomorrow I won't be distracted.
Right, future you has it all together.
You build up this superhero version of future you, but then tomorrow arrives and you wake up and it's just regular, tired you again. The difficulty of the spreadsheet hasn't actually changed, but your brain flat out tricked you into thinking it would shrink overnight.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how big tasks create a perfect storm in the human mind.
Yeah, a complete disaster.
Let's look at the variables. Big tasks are typically vague, which triggers anxiety. They are emotionally aversive, which triggers the need for immediate mood repair.
Right.
They have delayed rewards, which your brain discounts. And they trigger the neurological illusion that later will feel easier, reducing the perceived cost of delaying.
So when you put all four of those biological and psychological realities together, a clear picture emerges. You aren't broken. Your brain is just executing a very predictable but very bad trade.
A terrible trade.
Relief right now in exchange for absolute panic later.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, once we understand this bad trade the brain is making, how do we actually hack the system to get the work done?
Because the work still has to get done.
That's right. At the end of the day, we still have to write the paper and launch the project. Well, the first evidence-based solution we found is what behavioral psychology calls implementation intentions. It's more commonly known as if-then planning.
If-then planning. Okay.
A foundational meta-analysis looked at nearly 100 independent tests of this strategy. They found it had a solid positive effect on goal attainment, but specifically a very strong effect for simply getting started.
So how does that look in practice? Is it just like setting an alarm on my phone?
More like creating a mental algorithm
Yeah.
instead of a vague intention like, I really need to work on my paper tonight. Which, by the way, is essentially an invitation for task aversiveness to creep in. You make it highly conditional.
Okay, give me an example.
If it is 7 p.m. and I am sitting at my desk, then I will open the draft for exactly 10 minutes.
Oh, that makes sense. It completely removes the fog. It takes away the brain's need to make a decision in the moment, which we know causes friction.
It kills decision friction entirely. However, the data forces us to introduce a vital caveat here.
There's always a catch.
Always. Planning is not a magic wand. A massive field experiment tracked over 800 people trying to build a habit of going to the gym. The researchers gave them a simple planning intervention, very similar to the if-then model, and the result, a null effect. It did not work.
A null effect. Wait, why? If the if-then plan is so effective at cutting through decision friction, why did it completely fail for the gym goers?
Because a rigid structural plan shatters under the weight of emotional resistance if the underlying emotion is ignored.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If you are deeply insecure about going to the gym, or if the workout feels overwhelmingly physically aversive to you, setting a calendar alert for 5 p.m. isn't going to overcome that aversion. You will just ignore the alert.
So the unaddressed emotion will always trump the schedule.
Every single time.
Which brings us back to the Washington Post piece. They interviewed psychology expert Joseph Ferrari, and he gave this amazing visual metaphor to combat exactly this kind of overwhelm.
Yes, the forest metaphor.
Right. He said, don't look at the whole forest. Look at one tree, or even just 3 branches. If your brain is paralyzed by the emotional weight of a massive project, you have to dramatically shrink the entry point.
Which is so crucial.
Your to-do list shouldn't say, write the thesis. That's the whole forest. That guarantees a freeze response. Your to-do list should say, open the Google Doc and type the title. That's it. Just 3 tiny branches.
By shrinking the start, you lower the emotional aversiveness. Opening a document isn't inherently painful or confusing, but to truly hack the system long-term, you have to tackle the emotion head-on.
Right, getting to the root of it.
There was a recent randomized controlled trial that took about 150 university students and put them through a 9-week online training program.
But this wasn't a time management training, right? It was specifically an emotion regulation training.
Correct. And it significantly reduced their later procrastination compared to a control group. The way they achieved this wasn't by teaching them how to use a calendar. They taught them how to process their internal friction.
So dealing with the actual feelings.
Yes, by learning techniques to identify exactly what they were feeling, recognizing the physical sensation of anxiety, or pinpointing the source of their resentment, they were able to move past it.
So wait, how does simply naming a feeling fix the problem? Does it just magically make you want to work?
It's not magic, it's cognitive reframing. The ultimate takeaway from the clinical evidence is that you have to name the feeling before you force the action.
Name the feeling before you force the action.
Exactly. When you put a label on an emotion, it actually shifts brain activity away from the amygdala, which is the panic center, and over to the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and problem solving.
Okay, so when you are sitting there staring at the blinking cursor, instead of beating yourself up and saying, I'm so lazy, why can't I just do this? You stop.
You stop and assess.
Right. You take a breath and you say, I'm not lazy. I'm anxious. I'm anxious because the instructions for this project are completely vague and I'm terrified of doing it wrong. Just naming it takes the power away. It shifts you out of that panic response.
Exactly the mechanism. Once you use your logic center to identify that the vagueness is what is actually causing the anxiety, the solution changes. The solution isn't to grit your teeth and work harder.
Right. The solution is to email your boss to clarify the first step.
Exactly. You remove the specific emotional roadblock rather than just trying to force your way through a brick wall.
This is so good. Let's recap the core formula we've uncovered today, because I really think this completely changes how we should approach our to-do lists.
It really does.
Big tasks trigger aversion, specifically boredom, frustration, or resentment. That aversion triggers a desperate biological desire for short-term mood repair.
The need to feel good right now.
Right. And your brain justifies the escape through temporal discounting, basically doing bad math by ignoring the quiet future reward in favor of immediate relief.
Yep.
And finally, the effort illusion tricked you into believing that tomorrow's work will somehow miraculously be easier. So when you are stuck, your brain does not need more shame.
No, shame never works.
Beating yourself up does not regulate your emotions. It actually generates more negative emotion, which makes you want to procrastinate even more. What your brain actually needs is a much smaller doorway to walk through.
A smaller doorway, a clearer path, and a willingness to be emotionally honest with yourself.
So, here is our final call to action for you. Think about one big task you are actively avoiding right now. You know exactly which one it is.
It's the one that just made your stomach drop a little bit when we mentioned it.
Yeah, that one. Take that
Yep.
task and reduce it to the absolutely smallest, most ridiculously tiny visible move.
Just one step.
Don't write the quarterly report, just open the software. Don't clean the whole house, put exactly 1 cup in the dishwasher, shrink the doorway down to 3 branches, and start before your brain even has time to negotiate the bad trade.
This raises an important question, though. One final thought to leave you with that goes beyond the mechanics of the brain.
Oh, what's that?
We've spent this time establishing that procrastination is about avoiding negative emotions like frustration, boredom, or anxiety about the work itself. But what if, deep down, the emotion you are so desperately avoiding isn't actually about the work?
What do you mean? What else is there?
What if you are avoiding the reality of who you become, or the judgment you might face, once the task is actually finished and out in the world?
Oh.
If you never finish writing the novel, it can never be rejected by a publisher. If you delay the launch of your business, it can never fail in front of your friends. Is your brain protecting you from the effort of the task, or is it protecting you from being perceived by the world?
Oh, wow. That changes the entire landscape of why we hide from our goals.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. Let that sit with you the next time you reflexively reach for your phone to escape a blank page. Are you avoiding the work, or are you avoiding the result of the work? We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, pulling back the curtain on why that hot stove of a big task makes us freeze in our tracks.
We really did.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the mind. See you on the next deep dive.